back to my channel. My name is Tina and today is time for another one of my Makeup and Murder series. Today we're going to be talking about Kelly Cochran. You might be hearing about her or have heard of her, and Investigation Discovery is going to be airing a show about her called Dead North. As you know, I don't normally do current events, but this one is so interesting, and because it's already coming out on Investigation Discovery, I kind of found it irresistible, and I hope you do too. So for my look today, I'm going to be doing a peach, sort of red peach look. So you'll see some pictures here. I am going to run through real quick. Most of the makeup I'm going to be using. Hopefully that speeds this up a little bit. For my brows, I'm going to be using my Brow Gal eyebrow pencil. For my foundation, I will be using my Tarte and Milani. So I have my Cover FX primer and my Thank Me Later eye primer. I'm going to do my foundation, then I will do my eyes, then I will conceal. So no matter what order I do my makeup in, I hear from people. Kelly Cochran is a 34-year-old woman. She's moved quite a few places and actually moved around quite a lot during this period of time. Yeah, it all started out in Iron River, Michigan. And that is where the crime, one killing that we know of that's sort of starting this all off. She is married to Jason Cochran. Apparently when they got married, they made this vow, if one of them cheated, that person they cheated with, they would kill. According to Kelly, she didn't really take this seriously. It was just something they said. Who really follows through with something like that? Just the fact that, you know, they said this though, it's a little weird. And she even says she thought it was weird, but she went along with it because, you know, he's her new husband. And at first, everything's fine. Nobody's cheating. In 2014, their relationship, it turns a little bit abusive, or maybe a lot abusive, who the heck knows. She goes out and she cheats with this guy. Chris Regan is a 53-year-old Iraq veteran. He was served in the military for 20 years. Nice guy. He just happens to have a fling with the wrong woman. And it's not like a crazy in-depth fling or anything either, from the sounds of it. When it comes to things like this, I don't know who you'd trust. But in October, Kelly says they engage in this little affair. They sort of break it off. He's moving anyways. He's leaving town. He's got a job somewhere else he's gonna go do. Her husband finds out about the affair. She tells him, or who knows. He says, you know, we had this pact. And she, instead of saying, what are you, insane? No way in hell, says, okay. Well, then she calls Chris up and says, hey, before you leave town, stop by my house. You know, we'll have one last going away thing. You know, he's a guy. He's been sleeping with her off and on, so why not? He didn't think anything of the fact that she invited him to her house. You know, but who thinks that the person you're sleeping with is going to kill you? Whatever ruse she used to get him there, he comes. They go inside, start making out. Her husband waits for her to get inside, waits for her to sort of lure him. They're kissing. Her husband comes up behind him and shoots him in the head. Okay, right there we need to stop a minute and go, what the hell? Because that's all kinds of screwed up. She had to know what was going to happen, and she went along with it. So no matter what was going on here, she's a pretty screwed up individual. So now they have this dead body. Well, what do we do with the dead body? They chop him up, dismember him, and put him in this like wooded area a little ways away from their house. So everything goes fine. Nobody really knows that he's missing at first. People thought he had moved, and it wasn't till family starts going, hey, you know, he's not calling, for people to really go looking for him. The police, of course, you know, start looking into his past, and they look into this and that, and they discover he was having an affair. So they track down Kelly's house. Her husband, Jason, answers the door and lies to the police immediately. Says that she's not home. They know that she's home. They can actually see her silhouette in an upstairs window. Eventually, Kelly comes to the door. She makes up some lie about why her husband lied about her not being there, and tells the police, well, he left town. I don't know anything about this. They're pretty certain she's lying, and they go get a search warrant. This is what I'm going to use on my eyes. Take Me Home palette, the Smashbox Rose Gold palette, the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and then the Tropics palette from Face Candy. And I'm just going to start out with the ColourPop palette. Alright, so the police are pretty certain that she's lying, so they immediately go get a search warrant and come back to the house and go over it and try to figure out, you know, what happened there. They find a couple things that they find suspicious, but nothing that says, yes, for certain he was killed here, and they don't find a body. They do find like some forceps, which had his DNA on it, and they find a little bit of blood, but not enough to say he's actually dead. They try questioning her. When they realize that they've got a search warrant and are going to be questioning them, Jason and Kelly pick up and move. And not just a little move either. They move all the way to Indiana to get away from this. Now I'm going to take this reddy brown here and start building up my outer corner. So they've moved completely out of the state, away from this investigation as far as they can get. They're not answering the phone. They're certainly not helping with this investigation. The police don't have anything that they can really say, yes, you know, they did it, so we're going to arrest them. The police chief there is actually super convinced that she did it, and she ends up getting ousted out of office somehow or other. So there are multiple people investigating this case. I believe there's a retired officer who retired during the middle of it, even though it's recent. As always with these things, when you have multiple people doing investigations, these things get a little convoluted in that aspect. Not the evidence, but you know, the actual who did what where. The bottom line is they're fairly certain she did it, and they even go so far is to hire a psychic to come in and see if they can figure out where Chris's body is. The psychic comes in and pretty much does a holy crap, somebody died here, but you know, I don't know where they went. So this is my first time using this ColourPop palette. I love it. So in February 2016, you know, a couple years down the line now, Kelly's husband dies of what is at the time ruled a heart attack. Investigators come to the funeral and are talking to her. Just from the way she was acting, they were pretty certain something was going on and her husband's death. And people are, you know, investigators are trying to talk to her about what happened to Chris, so she takes off to Kentucky. In the meantime, they find out that her husband just died from being injected with heroin and then suffocated. And she did this while his mother was in the house. She made sure his mom see him having trouble breathing after she injected him with the heroin, and so she goes off to call 911 and then she suffocates him. That is a cold-blooded murder right there. I mean, to kill her husband while his mother is standing right there. She takes off again, but they track her down fairly quickly this time because they have evidence that she actually committed the murder. And in the meantime, while they're doing all this, things don't happen quickly in real-world policing. It takes time for pathology reports and the coroner and everybody to get all their ducks in a row and say exactly what happened. He was injected with heroin, and that's going to take some time, so probably several months before the results of that are going to come back. So while that's happening, one of the investigators gets this idea, and he calls a friend of hers from Michigan and has them call her and say, hey, he left me a letter a couple weeks before he died that he asked me to mail to the police if something were to happen to him. Kelly promptly freaks out. Please don't send that to the police. Please, please don't do that. He wasn't in his right mind. It could say anything. You know I would never do this. There is no letter, and she doesn't outright confess to anything or anything like that. This investigator has totally got her number at this point. He's doing things to try to get her to sort of panic and confess. And he has her meet him at this park where he has carved into the tree, I know where Chris's body is, or something like that. But she has passed out in her truck and they can't wake her up, so they end up calling the ambulance. She's just so mentally exhausted from everything at this point, fell asleep, and they couldn't get her to wake up. Which is kind of what happens when you tell lots and lots of lies. And I'm going to start using Candied Peach and build up on this outside, start bringing that in. I went a little more depth rose gold palette and used this Peachy Red Gold right here. And I went a little more shimmer, so I'm just going to dampen my brush a little bit. So they've been sort of playing mind games with her. Something that you hear a lot about in books, but you don't see very often in actual police work most of the time. I'm going to take this gold, and I'm just going to pat that in the center of my lid like that. And then I'm going to take puree right here into my inner corner. that's gonna do it for the top of my lids. I'm gonna use my Too Faced Chocolate Solee. I did my contouring real quick, and now I'm going to put on some concealer. I'm gonna use my Wet n Wild and my NYX. She's obviously reacting to all this stuff going on and all these things they're doing to try to get her to confess. She tells this one officer who's built up a relationship with her. He had over 40 meetings with her. She says to him, if you can tell me how my husband died, I will tell you what happened to Chris. He sits down and lays it out for her. It takes her a little bit, but she lives up to her side of the bargain on this, and she tells them what happened to Chris. I lured him in, my husband shot him, we chopped him up, we put him in this wooded area, leads them right to where his body was at. We find the skull and other bones and stuff right where she said they would be. And she explains how she tried to dig the bullet out of his head with the forceps they had found on the counter and everything. So they have her dead to rights at this point. She's convicted of her husband's murder, I believe on April 18th. She pleaded guilty to everything. This case is already pretty sensational, right? We've got psychics, we've got people trying to get her to confess using some creative means. Definitely not your run-of-the-mill average investigation. Obviously, all of this is creating a lot of hoopla in the area that they live in. So I cannot talk and do eyeliner at the same time. I did my waterline with the Beauty for Real in Champaign. I'm gonna do my eyeliner with Ciate eyeliner. I'm gonna do my highlight with this Tarte. It's called the Gleam Team. So I'm just using a loose blush by Studio Makeup. It's just kind of a dusty, rosy pink color. So now I'm going to use my Smashbox Rose Gold highlight. I am like obsessed with this highlight. And I'm just building that up. So there is no trial. She had pleaded guilty to the everything, sentenced to a life sentence. And at this point, other things start coming out. They had this barbecue at the same weekend that Chris went missing. The neighbors start talking about this barbecue and this weird meat they had brought over. According to everybody, it didn't taste right. They thought maybe it was going bad or something. This meat had made quite the impression on the neighbors. There's some pretty hilarious interviews. There is no evidence to support that this is true or not. If she did feed her neighbors human meat, it wouldn't be the first time something like that had happened. There's been a couple instances where people have said that they have fed their victims to other unknowing victims. It would be unusual. Weirdly, I've heard of more women doing this than men. We're now getting into the purely speculative part of this. I tend to go straight off fact, and I tell you guys when things are rumors or whatever. I like sticking with facts, the things I know happened, because they're interesting enough. It is possible that this happened. It is possible that she fed her victim to unknowing guests. That would be absolutely awful. It would be sadistic. It would be pathological. She would have to be a true sociopath. And there's also some talk that she is killed previous lovers across the Midwest and that there are like 9 of them. I take everything on TV when they do these investigations with a grain of salt. You know, you just got to be careful not to believe everything you see on those shows. So about Kelly herself. If even knowing what we know now is true, let's just go off what we know now and what she's admitted to. She has no conscience. She's out for self-gratification. Even people she loves, she supposedly loved her husband, and she killed him. That flies in the face of a ton of research on women and women killers and women killers that are in pairs. Typically the male is the stronger of the two. Not just physically, but they tend to be dominant in all of those things. And in this case, that would seem to be not true because she killed him. Now, that she killed him with poison, essentially, and then suffocation, which tend to be more female versions of killing. So it's entirely possible that her version of events to how Chris's murder happened is true. Just because that's how she killed that time doesn't mean that's how she killed every time. I doubt that she is what most people would think of as a true serial killer. It doesn't appear that she kept trophies or anything. I know that the actual psychologists and stuff who are looking at this case are talking about they're not finding any evidence of that. And it would be very unusual, especially to have a pair of serial killers who didn't keep some sort of trophy. It is possible that she did kill 9 other people. It is possible that she was out killing her lovers. I think it's improbable. Maybe they have evidence that we don't know about. I had heard about it as that she was a cannibalistic serial killer. It's funny because I don't think that's true at all. I don't think she ever ate anybody. Maybe she did feed somebody to people, or her husband did. That's tough to say, but that still isn't a cannibal. I'm not quite sure what that is. I tried looking it up because there's so few people who've ever done that, unless there's a practical reason for them doing so. And maybe that was the case here. Maybe this was just a way for her to get rid of the body. A very efficient one. That's entirely possible. Anybody who could live with somebody for that many years and then kill them that way, usually that bonds couples together, like really bonds them. So the fact that that bond didn't form, she said she killed her husband in revenge for him killing her lover. I don't buy that for a second. I think she killed her husband because she was mad and pissed off and worried that he was going to give her up to the police. That wouldn't surprise me. I would love to hear what you guys think. I want to hear what you think of this Dead North. I want to hear all about it. All right, guys, I will talk to you guys later. Bye!